"Come in, Miss Tyler, and welcome. Always pleased to see our neighbours. But what's this about your auntie?"
"Now you sit down here, Miss Tyler," said Banks, nobly offering his own comfortable chair. Banks was a plumber, and his feet often troubled him. Peggy Tyler, a smart if somewhat flashy young woman in her 20s, looked a little out of place in the homely kitchen. But she took Banks's chair, saying, "Thanks ever so," and began to pour out her troubles. "She's so poorly, Mrs. Banks. I took her to see the doctor, and he said her heart was valvular or something, and there were murmurs and that she ought to be careful. Well, ever since then I've tried to make her go slow, but she won't, you know. She does too much, always scrubbing and that, as though the house mattered compared with her health." "Ah," put in Banks, "that's a woman all over, house-proud. Your auntie's always been the same. What I says is—"
"Now you be quiet, Banks," said his wife firmly. "You tell me what you're worrying about, dearie," she added to Peggy, and Peggy went on. "She comes over all queer, Mrs. Banks, goes all dizzy, and the other day she nearly fell down in the tube, and she's that short-sighted too. I don't think she ought to live in that house all alone. As you know, I've been staying with her nearly a month, and I meant to go home next week, but I don't see how I can with her being so shaky." "But I thought you were going to get married, dearie," said Mrs. Banks, and Peggy sobbed. "So I was, and my Bob's ever so keen, but I'm the only relation Auntie's got, and I don't see how I can leave her."
"Well, that wants thinking about," said Banks weightily. "A chance is a chance, and a girl ought to turn her back on a good husband if so be one offers. Your auntie now—"
"Be quiet, Banks," retorted his wife. "Miss Tyler's quite right to think of her auntie. Not that we wouldn't keep an eye on her, us having been neighbours nearly 12 years. I'd always pop in and welcome, and I'd sleep in any time she's feeling poorly. Now, say if we settle it like this, dearie. You stay on another week, and if she don't seem no worse, you go back home and get busy with your trousseau and that. And if so be it's necessary, Banks'll drop you a line and tell you how Auntie is. You just trust us to keep an eye on her, see?" "Thanks ever so. That'd be a great weight off my mind," said Peggy Tyler. "Auntie'd be that cross if she knew I'd worried you, her being too independent to tell anyone she's poorly, but I just couldn't get away without saying something, and she goes that blue in the face sometimes I'm real frightened."
"I'm very glad you told us, miss," said the irrepressible Banks. "As Mother says, we'll keep an eye on Miss Walton. Been friends and neighbours all these years. Couldn't do less."
"And she's fond of you," declared Peggy. "And us of her," said Mrs. Banks. "Now you rely on us, dearie, and though Banks didn't put it very well, chance is a great thing, so don't you go and miss yours. Never keep a young man waiting when he's ready with the wedding ring."
"She's a smart piece, and I've no doubt she's snappy at demonstrating those electric gadgets," said Banks later when Peggy had gone. "But I wish her joy of that Bob Hewson of hers. And that reminds me, didn't Miss Walton promise to leave you her silver tea service and that gold watch of her dad's?"
"What a thing to say!" protested Mrs. Banks. "I'm ashamed of you. Not but what she did promise, us having been neighbours so long, and her not too partial to that Peggy."
"I wonder if the old lady put it down on paper," ruminated Banks. "When you nursed her over that bronchitis, she did mention a legacy. Be a pity if her wishes wasn't carried out."
"There is that," agreed Mrs. Banks. "But we can't do nothing about it, so it's no use worrying."
"I'm not so sure of that," said Mr. Banks thoughtfully. "I might put in a word, tactful like. I know what. I'll tell her I'm making a will myself, and ask her if she'd oblige by being a witness to same. That'll sort of break the ice. And you can say as how it's everybody's bound and duty to make a proper will, so's to save all the nasty backbiting and unpleasantness you get after the funeral."
"Now you stop it, Banks," said his wife severely. "If you so much as mentions the word funeral to Miss Walton, you'll put your foot in it proper. Why, with a heart like that, she might pop off any minute if you upsets her, and what about her legacy then? I can see that Peggy Tyler showing respect to the dead by carrying out her auntie's sacred wishes, I don't think. If ever there was a Miss Grab-all, it's that Peggy."
"Ah, didn't I always tell you there was more in it than met the eye when Miss T came over all attentive to Auntie?" said Banks. "And there must be a nice little bit in the bank, too, for Miss Walton's lived very ladylike and comfortable all these years. Tell you what, Maggie, you make an habit of going in there last thing of an evening, just to see Miss Walton's comfortable and that, and I'll offer to fix that sink of hers she's had trouble with. Maybe do that bit of wiring, so she can have the electric over her sink, same she's been wanting. Little bit of neighbourly attention,
to lead up to me just